Hey everybody, Riot Mort here, and if you are watching this video, this is the second video I'm releasing to get ready for PBE for our 16th set, excuse me, Teamfight Tactics, Lore and Legends. Now, if you haven't watched the other video is the normal PBE rundown where we go over the content. It's like a 90-minute video to get through it all. It's a lot, but definitely check that one out first so you know what we're talking about. Now, that being said, I breezed through that video as fast as I could to get through all the content. This video is more, I want to talk to our engaged players. And when I say engaged players, this is people who have been playing TFT for a while, or people who actively participate in the community, or, you know, you play like 100 or more games a set, and you really are deep into TFT, right? This is a video for all of you guys. And I want to talk about our goals with this set and talk about some various things. So it's been a while since we've talked. Communication on my end at least has been quiet for the last bit, so I wanted to talk about some stuff, just so that we're on the same page and you know what we're trying to do here with this set, rather than trying to guess our intentions or figure out what we're trying to do here. So here are all the topics I'm going to cover. I'm not going to read the list here, you guys have eyes, but like I said, I want to kind of go deep on each of these. Who knows how long this will be? But again, to hopefully show you what we're trying to do with Lore and Legends, because it's a different set than normal. This is not your standard TFT set. This is a bit different. We're taking some swings here. So let's dive right in. First off, I want to talk about carries. Now, in a normal TFT set, I've slowly had this framework over time where I've been like, every non-tank champion must be a 3-item carry, and it has led to the result of losing things like support units, especially at higher costs, because, well, if you only have 8 4-cost carries, but 2 of them are support, well, now you only have 6 4-cost carries, and the variety in the game goes down pretty significantly. And as people were getting more mature in TFT, this was leading to some pretty repetitive endgame states. But I kind of mentioned this in the rundown, that we have 100 champions this time, and with 100 champions, we don't have to worry about that. We can have champions that aren't necessarily primary carries or have little more niche roles, which is great. And so we lean into that. So, you know, there are examples of champions that are just very clearly not intended to be primary carries. For example, Lulu, one of the things we ran into was like, well, if Lulu is an AP carry and Teemo is an AP carry, well, then it's like, when do you signal which one you're supposed to play? Well, the reality is, if you're playing a low-cost reroll Yordle, we kind of want you playing Teemo. And so Lulu gets to be kind of an assist unit. And so Lulu can have a more supportive output. That's cool. Aphelios is a threat-like unit. He's a Targon champion, so if you get him early, he's strong. But that doesn't mean reroll Aphelios. He's got no traits to scale him up. No amount of, scaling we can do on him is going to make him really great in the end game. But he provides Sunder for your team, so you can pair him and play utility, which is cool. I talked about Kobuko and Yumi in the rundown. People like Diana and Singed, they do damage. It's not like they're not carries, right? Like Diana and Singed will both do effective things for your comp, but they're not like solo primary carries. They can just add some stuff to your team and be secondary, right? Like Diana can be really good to just hit the backline a little bit while maybe you're playing Demacia Lux, So, and then Cho'Gath is another example where it's like, Cho'Gath doesn't really have any tank outputs, so he's not really the best tank, but he has an AoE CC at 2 cost, which is really valuable. And so you might be tempted to keep him in, whether it be a Juggernaut comp or anything like that, just because he's got some good utility. And so, like I said, this is an intentional thing that we're doing, and there's a bunch of others. These are just 6 examples. These aren't the only 6, but this set, we can do that. So don't be on I don't need messages of like, why isn't my Lulu reroll comp working? Because it's not going to, right? Like, that's just not going to be a thing. And so it'll be up to you guys to discover. If you ever have any questions about like, hey, is this champ supposed to be a carry? Because like, what I don't want is you being like, oh, is Yunara supposed to be a carry? That's unclear to me. If they don't have utility output, they're probably a carry. But assuming our balance is good, the carries should carry. It should be pretty obvious. In addition, one of the things we're trying this set, and we've heard the feedback a lot of like, hey, our comp is getting locked in at 2-1, right? Like 2-1, you take an augment that says Bruiser Crown, and guess what? You're playing this exact Bruiser comp you looked up on a website, and that's that. We're really trying to avoid that this set. And something that I've been saying needed to come back for a while, so have a lot of you. A lot of you players have been like, man, we really loved these when they were there the first time, was threats. And so a lot of this set was designed to have very threat-like champions that need very little, if any, of their traits. One of the things I called out in the rundown is the 5 cost, the base 5 cost, not the unlockable, but literally the starting point for the set was every base 5 cost. If they had traits, fine, but they didn't need them. And so you're going to see a lot of very flexible champions, with the idea being that, like, let's say you're level 7 and playing, Demacia, and you see a Azir, that'll change your plan. It'll make some adjustments. Or if you're level 5 and you hit an early misfortune, that doesn't mean you have to go Bilgewater. You could just play 2 Gunslinger and some solid frontline and be fine, Seraphine's another great example where, like, she'll want 2 Disruptor for sure. It's good. And you'll probably splash 2 Piltover because 2 Piltover is a very good splash. But that's about it. You don't really need 4 Piltover or 6 Piltover. And we'll talk about it a little bit later. But, like, again, all of these units are meant to allow you to sort of play what you hit and cook, And so, again, most of the champions in the set, especially at the 4 and 5 cost range, are meant to be that. Now, this is one of the reasons I'm making this video, is that I want you guys to know that that's the intention. If we miss this, right, like let's say for whatever reason we tune it and people are like, hey, the reality is Misfortune is only playable in vertical Bilgewater. And like that's what we're seeing on PBE and it's scary. We'll change it. We will nerf the trait and we will buff the champion. Because again, the intention, and this is why I'm telling you this now so that you can hold us accountable, is that we want these champions to be something that don't require a ton of trait investment, and you can cook and do some pretty cool things with it, right? And even some of the unlockables, right? Like Set is a really good example where, yes, he's Ionia, and if you're going to play vertical Ionia, great, he'll be good in it, but you could also just play him on his own because he's Set and he has 2 health bars and he slams, Rift Heralds down and AoE's boards, and that's cool. So you can do that. So yeah, there you go. All right, and then utility, like I talked about, this kind of goes into the thing about not being a carry, but we made a ton of things that, and this is how we're sort of making it so that verticals aren't necessarily the thing you always have to play, is because yes, you could play 7 Demacia, but you could also play 5 Demacia, cut the Sona and the Vayne, and put in a Skarner and a Taric, and all of a sudden you have a completely different buff with more armor and MR, and some stronger units. And a lot of the champions in the set, whether it be directly like Skarner and Taric, for those, if you missed it, Skarner provides an armor aura for your team, and Taric provides an MR aura for your team. They can be really flexible. Or, like I said, if they activate some of our 2-piece traits, which are just very powerful. So like Kobuko is utility with the Yuumi that's on your board. He provides 2 Bruiser, which is powerful, 2 Invoker, which is powerful. Seraphine we already talked about. Annie can provide Arcanist, which is great. Ornn is obviously valuable just because he's making artifacts every 4 turn. That's going to be good. And then even like Fiddlesticks and Lucian, right? Fiddlesticks provides that anti-armor and MR aura. Lucian and Senna give your team damage and damage amp and damage resistance. And so again, all of a sudden it's like, ooh, do I really want to stay 7 Bilge? Or do I cut Alawi and Twisted Fate for Fiddlesticks and Lucian? And the answer most of the time is going to be cut the low-cost units and play the high-cost units, because these powerful auras that you can find in the late game are meant to make your board better this set. And again, if that's not happening, we will buff them. We will buff the auras, we will buff the champions to be more powerful. But if you're in the late game and you find a Fiddlesticks, you should be like, ooh, even itemless with no Vanquisher, that's kind of worth it, right? Let me cut the Sona and put that in, and that's going to be good, right? So like that's our intention with some of these utility champions. Now, all of this is leading to, and you've kind of heard me allude to this, but I want to be very clear here, is that the entry points of traits, the 2 and 3 piece, are intentionally tuned to be very powerful this set. So stuff like 2 Bruiser, 2 Arcanist, 2 Quick Striker, all very powerful auras. Or even like base entries like 3 Demacia, 3 Ionia. A lot of the 3 pieces are a little bit over budget than normal, so that you like want to have at least the 3 piece going, right? Two Disruptor, I think, is another example of a very powerful two-piece that's like you get 25% damage amp just for two-piece, which is already good, and the 10% dazzle. And that's good, right? But do you need to go for Disruptor? Not really. You can, but you don't have to. Because, and this is our goal for this set, and this is different than most sets. This is a change that I'm hoping a lot of our engaged players are really happy with, but vertical comps will likely be stronger at low elos and in the mid game. So I want to be clear, like, you are going to play 7 Demacia, 7 Bilgewater sometimes, but they are expected to not be the top capped comps unless you have an emblem. So emblems change things a little bit. And I want to give you a really clear example here, which is Bilgewater, right? I expect you to go 7 Bilgewater, get a bunch of Silver Serpents, use those Silver Serpents to buy maybe 2 of the tier 2 items, and then go, okay, I'm starting to hit level 9, it's time to cut maybe, probably not the Alawi, because Alawi plus Tom Kench is 2 Bruiser, so maybe you cut the Twisted Fate and the Graves for a Kindred and an Azir or something like that, or an Ornn, or, you know, some of these other 5 costs that you can hit. Shyvana is really good in Bilgewater because you get the Juggernaut. And like, that's the intention. And if that's not correct, again, that means we will need to shift some of our values, but the top capped boards are going to maybe play the verticals for a bit in stage 4 and 5 and then pivot out of them, or just not touch them at all. And that's intentional. Now, if a forcible vertical comp on the final board is considered S tier, it's a pretty clear sign we're going to nerf it. Like, I'm just going to be blunt right up front. Like, if 7 Demacia, for example, is just strong and everyone's playing 7 Demacia, we'll probably nerf the trait. So that's kind of our intention. This set is meant to be a lot less vertical, a lot more wide. Prismatic traits worth touching on real quick here. I already talked about how there's 2 different methods, the traditional emblems and the augment access. Pretty standard here. The expected power is over a 3-star 4 cost, so they're meant to be better than a 3-star 4 cost, but below a 3-star 5 cost. A 3-star 5 cost is better. Now, as you saw with the removal of Wandering Trainers and the removal, there are no augments in the game that give you like +1 trait invisibly. All the augments are just emblems. They're not on dummies. We actually had to redesign Dish Soap's Prismatic augment because originally it had a target dummy because that's what he had taken in the tournament. And then we're like, nope, that's a +1. Got to take it out. So there are no ways to really cheat that level 10 requirement. And that's the kind of hurdle we're kind of saying that'll keep them hard. But now the thing with prismatic traits is we do have to make sure for our less engaged players that they're achievable. You know, some of the feedback around set 15, KO Coliseum, was that like prismatics were too hard to hit. And so that can't be the case. And so I will say right now, I believe the emblem ones are a little bit too hard to hit. Although before I wrote this and then we buffed the spatula rates on Carousel a little bit, so we'll see. But I want to be clear that like these do need to happen every, you know, once in a while. And if they're not, we are going to increase spatula availability through various means. It could be through orbs, could be through carousels. But I just want to be clear on that, that like we need prismatic traits to be a thing that happens, but not so often. And we will be looking at high elo rates in particular to make sure that it's just not too often. But the nice thing here is there's no like, oh, it's 2-1 and they have a dummy with an emblem, they're gonna hit it, you know? So hopefully these end up in a good state. I know this is something that high elo players especially are sensitive to, but we're keeping a close eye on it. All right, now one of the things is that we've been talking about is that this set, there's a lot of 4 and 5 costs. And as like I said, the set is loaded with 4 and 5 costs. And because of that, it was designed to heavily favor traditional leveling. This is a set that I expect most of the time you are playing level 8 boards that get 4 costs into level 9 boards that get 5 costs, and those are the traditional lines. You should expect most of the time this to be your traditional path. Now, that's not to say reroll is not an option, right? We didn't kill all reroll comps, that's not the goal. But I think if you're a big fan of reroll, you have a right to be a little nervous, because the set was not designed to be like a, oh, I got a 1-cost Viego, time to play reroll Viego. That's not how this set works. Now, like I said, there are a couple reroll enablers. If you can get Bard early, for example, certain augments, but like reroll should be the kind of thing that, hey, if I got like an early Jinx with a Ginsu's and I have 4 Jinx on 3-2 and then take Heroic Grab Bag Plus, okay, fine. I'm probably going to be able to hit Jinx 3 and make that work, and that should be successful. No problem. But if every single game I'm like, I'm going to play Jinx, I'm going to take combat augments, and I'm definitely going to hit my 3-star Jinx and do well, no. That's not the goal of this set. And so basically what I will say is if there is ever a reroll comp that is forcible with like no help, no augments, no specific cases, and it's the strongest comp, it's likely to be nerfed. Because again, this is a set where we made a bunch of extra 4 costs, a bunch of extra 5 costs. And for this set in particular, we believe that the journey is important to TFT. We really want to go kind of get back to our roots of you start on a line, you start playing it, stage 3 happens, you start reacting to the 4 costs and the 5 costs you hit, you adjust your plan, and the people who do that the best are the people who are going to be rewarded. So that is the intention of this set. And again, I understand if you're someone who's like, man, but I really love reroll comps, that's gonna suck for me. I hear you. And like I said, we kept stuff like Bard to really help out with that. But also, that's gonna be the truth for this set. And we're not gonna budge on that. That is gonna be the goal. So now again, by the same lines though, what I don't need is you sending me a screenshot of Mort, a 3-cost reroll comp 1, fix it. Like, no, again, they are allowed to succeed, just not most of the time. And that's going to be the line that we're going to have to draw. I know that's a blurry line, but keep us accountable, you know? All right, last thing to note in this same area here is, again, we talked about how the set is loaded with 4 and 5 costs. And so what you are going to see, especially on PBE, and my God, we know this is going to happen on PBE, and we are not going to overreact to it, is a lot of the endgame boards are going to be like, look, they have 5 5 costs, 6 5 costs. Look at all the 5 costs they have. Oh my God, is Legendary Soup the most broken thing every game? And again, part of that is intended. Part of that is, yeah, boards with strong units are going to do well this set. Part of that is it's PBE, it's soft lobbies. This happens every PBE. And so we're not going to make the mistake of, oh no, that's happening, better nerf them all. Nope, not a thing. But here's the thing I do want to call out is that if we look at like a lot of the endgame boards, and let's say, I'm going to use hyperbole for a second here. Let's say every endgame board we see has exactly 6 5 costs in it. Okay, fine. But if every single one of those boards also includes exactly Shyvana, Kindred, and Volibear, okay, we'll probably nerf Shyvana, Kindred, and Volibear, right? Like, because what we want is a wide variety of different legendary soup boards because we have so many 4 and 5 costs, not the same 3 every time. And that's the advantage of this unlock system and having so many choices, is that we can still achieve good variety. So again, that's the difference here. If the same legendary is being used too often, they'll likely get adjusted. If legendary soup is always winning, that's kind of this set, you know? So, and again, there's degrees here, right? If literally a perfect high roll 3-star Jinx is on board can't even compete with a low roll 5-cost legendary soup, we have a problem. I don't think that's where we'll be though. But again, just want to be very transparent here that this is the goal of this set. All right, opening encounters. I showed you guys the list of full opening encounters, but again, for a lot of our engaged players here, we didn't want the game to be about reacting to opening encounters and having every game be so wildly different, right? I won't call out the game, but I know there's at least one other game in the space that has like an opening encounter sort of system, but they're just so wildly variant that like every game feels so insanely different. And so most of ours are pretty low impact. I think the 3 highest impact ones are Loot Subscription, Scuttle Puddle, and Prismatic Party. And even Prismatic Party technically is just a normal game that happened to roll triple Prismatic. But I understand that triple Prismatic games are different. But overall, these are still what I'd call like relatively within reason. But obviously your Scuttle Puddle games, Fast 9 will be even stronger. It's a thing. But overall, this is a small percentage of them. And you could look at the full list and most of them are pretty standard. And then obviously the other part of the equation here is Emblem Ensemble. We got rid of Wandering Trainer. We've got Emblem Ensemble. So again, the hope here, and I understand, like some people right now are already going, wow, they still couldn't get rid of it. I'm screwed by my emblems. But the hope here is that the combinations of verticals being weaker, more options, more powerful two-piece traits, things like that, classes being a little bit better, is that we see a lot more creativity with this, because you can reforge the emblems, you can move the emblems, figure out who they belong on, do some really cool stuff. We will keep an eye on this, and I hold me to this. This isn't one of those things that we're like, this must stay in the game. No, we actually don't believe that this time. We're trying this, and if you tell me 2 patches down the line, every high elo game where this happens, you can figure out who the winner is on 2-1, we'll probably make some big adjustments or remove it, straight up. Because we don't want that to be the case for this set. But I do think this is at least worth a shot, right? And so at least approach this from an open mind for me. Be willing to try it. And if it doesn't play out, fine, hold us to that. But just give me the benefit of a doubt here. Give it a few games, you know. Overall, we think it's been pretty fun so far, but again, keep us honest. All right, items and Radiant items. Like I said, this is something we're trying to get to a really, really good spot here. We want this to be the kind of thing where the item system is in the best state it's ever been. I think, for example, last set there was a part where it was like everyone was fighting over the bows and no one was taking the cloaks and the rods, right? Like every carousel was kind of predictably the same. We want to avoid that. We want to avoid that pretty heavily. And so keep us honest there, like give us input, right? We did a lot of buffs to like the cloak items, like Ionic Spark, Adaptive Helm, stuff like that. Even Shojin got a bit of a buff here, so tier items should be pretty good. Invoker uses tiers. So, but if we still find certain components are less desirable, we will probably buff the things that build into it, you know? And so keep us there. And then, like I said, the Radiant item is also getting that full reset. This is one I expect us to have to make adjustments though. Like if we're full resetting the Radiant items, and if you tell me day 1 Radiant Dragonclaw is a terrible, terrible item that you should never take, I believe it. I totally believe it, right? Radiant Dragonclaw is now like 150 MR and some health regen. It's pretty niche, right? And how often do you really need that much MR? Not that often. So I believe it. And so if that's the case, we will slowly adjust that over time, but we wanted to get back to a nice baseline to kind of start that off. And at least everything that I'm aware of that gives a Radiant item, for the most part, has some agency in it, right? It's either like Radiant Relics where you get to pick one of 5, or it comes with a Reforger. So if you get like Radiant Dragonclaw, you can just reforge it. But again, give us feedback. But that's kind of our goals for items here, is we want to make sure the item system is generally the most balanced it's ever been. But Radiant items, like I said, I expect there to be some deviation in Radiant item desirability, but not too much, right? Stuff like Archangels versus Deathcap should be a lot closer, and if it's not, we'll fix it. So, yeah. All right, artifacts. Okay, so this is where one of the first big accountable things I want to talk about is, I know artifacts right now have a bad reputation, right? Like whether it was Luden's RE or the $3 unit Garen with Innervating Locket. You know, artifacts definitely got really warping last set. Now, artifacts are meant to be narrow, and I think before when I used to talk about artifacts, it was like, if it's only good on one champion, that's okay. We're trying to steer a little away from that. If an artifact is literally only good on one champion, that's a problem. And we will probably adjust and or nerf, and in worst cases, remove the artifact if that's true. Most of the artifacts have been a bit homogenized, which basically means make them a little more generic so that they can work on multiple champions. Now, that's not to say there aren't still best champions, right? For example, Silvermere, the one that gives you a bunch of armor, AD, and makes your attack speed really, really low. Totally expect that to be really good on Brock and Darius, right? Like, they're going to be the 2 best users. And so if they end up being the 2 best users, okay, but at least there's 2, right? At least there's multiple. But the thing that we're holding the framework to is that no artifact should ever be better than a Radiant item. So, for example, I think Innervating Locket for a while there, if you looked on Garen in the last set, was better than Radiant Warmogs and Radiant Bramble and Radiant Gargoyle. Not okay. Right? So if any champion has an item delta over their best Radiant items, this will require the artifact to get nerfed. So we'll taking very clear thing on that. Artifacts are meant to be around 1 to 1.5 items of power. Now, here's the part where I'm going to start doing accountability here. Every Monday, I'm going to do a morning meta report, at least for the first month. And what that will include is a couple announcements talking about where we are with things. Here's the first of those. If Portable Forge, which is usually a good indicator of the overall artifact power in a set, is over 4.4 in our data, I will tell you. In this morning Monday report, I will go, hey guys, just so you know, Portable Forge is sitting at a 4.28. Okay? So artifacts are a little strong. And what that will also indicate is that we need to nerf artifacts. And we will. We will find the artifacts that are overperforming, nerf them down to get Portable Forge to a 4.4. That will be our framework. I will tell you that. I will be open and transparent about that. And we can talk about what artifacts need to be adjusted, which ones are being too warping, things like that. And we'll do it. So this is something that, again, I still believe in artifacts. I think they add some variety to the game that's interesting. There's a reason beyond power, Portable Forge has been our most picked augment for all time. But I also agree that they need to be balanced and healthy and not just weird hero augments that warp the game entirely and give you +2 placements. So, yeah, cool. All right, augments. So I talked about it a little bit in the rundown, but I really want to stress this is we put significant effort into augment tailoring, so that focused on making sure there's no bad options at each point in the game. This isn't the kind of thing that you can manipulate, but basically the long story short is we spent a good month where every playtest we'd be like, here's our champs and traits feedback, fine, but also here is every augment I was offered, and anytime I'm like, I would never take this augment in a million years, and we cut it. Or we'd say no longer offered at 2-1, right? So you're not gonna get these combat augments that are really good on 4-2 offered on 2-1. That's just not a thing anymore, because we put a lot of time in to make sure that every choice should be valid. Now, there's going to be some subjectivity to this. For example, I as a player, I just don't like healing orbs. Every time healing orbs is offered to me, I'm just not taking it. 3-2, 4-2, doesn't matter. I just don't like that augment. Powerful, it's fine. We even buffed it a little bit in our data, it's gonna look good. But it's the kind of thing I just don't like. That doesn't mean we cut healing orbs, right? But if we look and any augment is just not in a good spot, or people are generally has a very low pick rate at a certain spot, we'll probably remove it from there. Because again, we want all 6 augments that get offered to you at least be somewhat tempting from your position. And so what that meant was we also needed to add a bunch of augments in different spaces, right? So we needed combat augments in 2-1 that are actually good in 2-1, which means usually there's some sort of quest combat augment or stacking combat augment. Otherwise, they don't really need to be there. Or we needed some econ augments in 4-2 that are actually worth taking and not just literally only invested and that's your only choice. Maybe you'd want gold in 4-2 and you need to fast 9. What are your options? So we made sure there were a bunch of options at each time. I think if there's one criticism of the augment system this set, you could look at these all and say, well, we kind of played it safe. But that was to make sure that we filled out the roster of a lot of really good choices. And so again, we had a major focus on removing suboptimal choices from each stage and things like that. Now, again, we only have so many playtesters here that are giving their opinions. Day 1 of PBE, we're going to get a lot more. What I would love from you guys is every day, if you you see an augment, you're looking at an augment, you see these choices and you're like, I would never in a million years take that augment. Why is that there? Tell us. We really want to react very quickly so that, and there's really 2 things that will happen if that's true. One is the augment might just be weak. If so, great, we can buff it up so it's tempting. Or 2, the augment just shouldn't be there, right? If we've made an augment that we thought would be fun but isn't, cool, we'll cut it, because we don't like dead choices. We don't like tricking the player into having a bad time because an augment's not fun. So that's kind of our big goal for augments this set. And the other one I want to talk about is we're having a lot less 2-1 augments that lock your direction. I talked about how there's no crown crests augments in this set. That's not to say there's none, because we know there's a group of players out there, especially in our less engaged audience, that like having some direction on 2-1 can be good, right? Ooh, this is the game I got the Viego Shadow Isles augment. I'm going to play Viego Shadow Isles this game. Great. Having some of those is okay. But man, we had too many. If you go back and look at like a set 15 game, sometimes it was 3, 4, in rare cases, even 5 of your 2-1 augments are like insanely direction locking. And given our goals for the set, we want to avoid that. So a lot of 2-1 augments have been removed that are direction setting. Now, keep in mind, I think the definition of direction setting here is going to be dependent on the person, right? So for example, one of the new champion augments, I believe it's from the set 4 one, is gain a Ginsu's Rage Blade, and when 2 people die, gain 40 gold. And you could say, oh, a Ginsu's Rage Blade, that's direction setting. No, that is not our definition of direction setting. A single Ginsu's, you can still play a variety of options. That's okay. What was direction setting was like, here's a Zaun emblem. Well, you're playing Zaun. There's no other choice, you're playing Zaun, right? We wanted to avoid that kind of stuff. So just make sure you're not coming back with me with like, I got a single sword, this set my direction. No, come on. So, cool. All right, now here's the other part of that Monday morning meta report here. Augment stats are not coming back. I've been very clear on that. I do think the positives of not having stats have worked out in our favor. I know there are a group of people out there, you know, I'll high roll. It's not even this high, but I'll just give you the credit. Let's just say 10% of our players are going to be really sad by that because they really like the stats. And I understand that frustration. I hear you. The part of this frustration I actually agree with is the accountability, right? Like if there's an augment out there that's sitting at a 3.6 and you have no way to know it and you don't know it, that's kind of BS, right? Or on the other end, if there's some bugged augment that's sitting at a 5.2 because it's bugged and you don't know it, that's kind of BS. Our goal for this set is that all augments should be between 4.2 and 4.8 at their given stage, okay? Now, to help with this accountability, straight up in this Monday morning meta report, I will post publicly the list of every augment that is outside that range. I will go, these are fake numbers here, but if I'm like, Portable Forge, 4.18, Golden Egg, 4.02, right? Like I will straight up list them out so that you will know, just like everybody else, that this is what's happened. Now, what that also means is very likely we will action on these, okay? Like if I list out an augment that's overpowered, chances are you can expect a nerf or a buff, you know? Now, I will say there are exceptions, okay? For example, Tomb Raider, historically in our data, was sitting at around a 4.0. It also was like never picked. And it's sort of a, like, this is where stats can lie to you, because if you're in the position to pick Tomb Raider, you're comfortable enough that you're probably going to top 4 and take advantage of it. And so you inherently just have better data. Likewise, another famous example here was Trait Tracker, which Challenger players would historically say was incredibly overpowered. But in our data, even at, you know, Grandmaster Plus would be sitting at like a 5.1. And like Challenger players were still saying, nerf it, remove it, nerf it, remove it. So in those reports, I'll also talk about like, hey, if there's some augments here that like actually happen to be healthy at this state, fine. And just so you know, it won't change. I think the one example I can already like shot call will be this for sure is Golden Egg. Golden Egg historically in our data usually sits around a 4.1. But it's Golden Egg, right? Like that's much like Tomb Raider. That's just the way that works. So does that mean Golden Egg needs nerfed? No. We're okay with having a couple augments that work like that. But again, I'll be transparent with that. And so at least for the first month, I can't promise it beyond that. I'd hope to continue it, but I can't promise. I've got other work that's going to pop up. I will very clearly talk about this so that we can together transparently try to get the augments into this 4.2 to 4.8 range. I think if everything's generally in that range, then there's some skill extraction and things like that, and things are good. And I'll be honest with you, I think if you could see the last set data, I don't think we hit that. But this time I'm committing to you that we're going to, and I'm committing to you by showing you the receipts. I will straight up tell you where we're not making that. So, yeah. Last two things here. I want to talk about our approach to balance patches after we launch here. Obviously, PBE is usually hectic. You're going to see a lot of number changes as we try to get things in the right spot. Because as much as we've play tested, like I think I've played around 50 to 60 games of Lore and Legend so far, but like it's only 50 and 60, and it's always in the same lobby with generally 6 of the 8 same people and 2 people who rotate out. And, you know, it's not 8 challenger players, you know, so our reads are pretty limited, and PBE is going to show us a lot of things. I think even the first day we had an influencer playtest, we immediately saw a few things that were like, oh crap, and we got to fix that, right? So like, there's going to be stuff that we're going to have to fix, and you can expect PBE to be pretty hectic. The hope though, and so we launch, it's patch 16.1. We have a couple micro patch options, though our goal is to not need to micro patch, but the holiday makes this a little tricky, okay? So 16.2 will be the patch that's after the break. So hopefully we got through the winter break, was in a pretty good spot. Into the Arcane and Remix Rumble both handled Christmas break well, so we know we can do it, so let's hope we do it again. But you can expect that when we come back, it'll be like, okay, time to make some adjustments, right? Like meta's had time to settle. We know what augments are outside of our framework, time to get those radiants and artifacts in the right spot. So 16.2 will be a pretty sizable patch. After that though, I'm holding the bar here that from 16.3 and on, our patches need to be a lot less swingy. We're gonna hope for, you know, a less total changes. Now, it's hard to say that for sure, because when I say less total changes and you're like, but there's 100 champions and 300 augments. So like, if you count the number of changes, it might be as big, right? Like, hopefully not, but it might see. Like, I'll be real with you. But I also commit that our goal here is it's a lot less swingy. So we should launch in a good enough state, especially because we don't have the extra curveball of like the fruits and things like that, that we can get it to a pretty good spot. So 2% nerfs, 5% buffs, things like that. We should be pretty good here. And so from 16.3 on, our goal is to do very, very light adjustments, mostly in augments and champions from that point on. And again, the ultimate goal here is that we want to have a wide variety of endgame boards from our large pool of champions available. We have 100 champions this set, and if you're telling me the same 3 boards are winning, we've screwed up, right? Like, with this many champions, there should be a ton of variety. So that's our goal. And finally, bugs. I don't want to not skip around the elephant in the room, because I know last set, bugs-wise, there were a lot, right? And so your question is like, well, what's going to be different this time? And bugs is one of those hard things because, you know, yes, I'm the gameplay director, but like, I can only do so much from a technical standpoint. But here's what I want to tell you. The team is starting from a much better standpoint this set, because a big part of it is just, frankly, it's less complex. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, 100 champions, how is that less complex? Because we know how a single champion works. We know how a champion plus an item works. That's all known good. Just because we have more of it, it's a known quantity. I think with KO Coliseum, the fruits added an angle of complexity that, frankly, we underestimated. We just weren't able to hit. But this time, I think we're starting from a better spot. We've also had a lot more eyes on it. You saw this in the learnings article. We talked about how we've had more jam days and things like that. It's not to say it's perfect. I'd be lying if I'm like, oh yeah, there's no bugs. There are going to be bugs. We're going to see bugs. I think literally in our last jam day, we found like 3. We're going to react quickly on PBE. We're going to do the best we can here. I think we're in a lot better spot. Please be vocal and let us know. I do want to shout out players. Like, one of the best things that happened, even in KO Coliseum when I was behind the scenes, was some of the pro players would find a bug and immediately message me, you know, and then I would pass that on to the team and they'd react accordingly. But this is another example where, like, I'm around now and we're going to be pretty vocal about it. Now, there's a different line though here that I want to talk about, right? Because one of the things that happens on the internet is like somebody has a bug that happened just to them one time, and then it gets shared on social media, and then everyone's like, oh my God, it's so buggy, right? And again, that's not to say there aren't bugs that were super common, cough, cough, Ramus pissing, but there were also bugs that were like 1 in a million games that would get conflated. And so if we have a bug that's like an exploit or a 1 in a million game or something that's just like incredibly niche, I'm not going to all of a sudden go on Twitter and be like, guys, you need to know about this exploit. I'm not going to do that, because the better tactic is, oh shit, let's just go fix this exploit before anybody else knows about it. But if it's something like, hey, there's this known bug that happens in every game, or hey, this augment's not working as expected, if we know it for sure, I'll try to do my best to communicate it. I can't promise 100%, because again, there's this fine line between being over-communicative and shining a spotlight on something that doesn't need it. Because the other thing too is that as many bugs as there were in the last set, there were also misreported bugs. People were like, oh yeah, this augment's definitely bugged. And then we'd go look and it's like, no, it's not. And I can't say that like we can shoot down every false bug report. That's not realistic of us. But all this is to say that we're definitely aiming for a much less buggy set. We're aiming to make this something that, has a much higher quality bar here. And please help us out here. Please continue to report bugs directly to me if you have to. That's been very valuable. If you find an exploit, if you find a bug, I really, really appreciate you letting us know. It'll help us make sure that this set is as good as it can possibly be. So, all right, and there you go. Hope it's good things it wasn't too long. But again, just want to kind of talk about the things that we're trying to do with this set. It's a pretty important set to me, so I just want to make sure you guys have as much fun as possible. And for all of you that you consider yourself engaged players and watch this video and the whole video, God, that's more than 2 hours of stuff. So I do want to close on a note here, which is, now that I'm kind of coming back and being a little more communicative here, I really want to say thank you to all of you, because it's you guys that have been playing TFT for years and playing for hundreds of thousands of games and really caring passionately about TFT and the quality it is that keeps us going and makes TFT, has been around for 6-7 years now, and it's you guys that make this possible. So I do want to acknowledge that, and that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of excited to come back and talk to you guys, because you deserve it, right? I'm here for you guys. I want to make sure that you guys are enjoying the game that we're putting out and holding that to the highest standards. So continue to talk to me. I'll be around, whether it be on Twitter, Discord, whatever. Let me know, and myself and the whole team will be around to make sure that this set is awesome, and every other set as well. So there you go. All right, that's enough jabbering. Hopefully you've watched these, and now hopefully PBE's in like a day or two. If you watch these before that, great. But yeah, PBE soon. So cool. All right, that's gonna do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.